Hi, I'm Paul Glatzel. I'm an RWA instructor based at Cobbs Quay Marina in Poole in Dorset, one of the MDL marinas. In this short session we're going to have a look at navigation marks, the buoys like we see behind me that help us to know where we are and help us to navigate into and out of a port or a harbour. So what you see over my shoulder is a port lateral mark, a channel mark, a red navigation mark. And we see these coming into harbour, the reds and the greens, the ports, the red ones, and the green ones, the starboard ones, marking the channel. And you can see it's quite a large buoy. And the reason it's large really is it's aimed at bigger ships. And as a general rule, the bigger the buoy, the bigger the ships it's aimed at. And if you look at that buoy, you can see some characteristics. You can see it's pretty much square. We call that a can. You can see it's got a number on it. And almost always the port buoys are an even number. You can see that one's number 26, and sometimes it has a name as well. And if we were looking at night, it may well be lit, but we'd need to have a look at a chart on that to actually see whether the chart shows it as being a lit buoy. And as we'll look at, as we get progressively further into harbour, the size of the reds and the greens reduces, be they floating buoys like this one, or they become posts with top marks, without top marks, as we'll have a look at. So here behind me you can see a starboard lateral marker, a green channel mark, and you can see this one's actually got a name, Hamish, in addition to the number we just referenced. And you can see the number here is an odd number, and as I said, that's not always the case that ports are even numbers and starboard are odd numbers, but it's more often than not the case. And you can see also the shape here is different in that it's more triangular or conical in shape. And that's really what differentiates or helps us to understand and see what is different between the red channel marks and the green channel marks. So just to remind there, when we're coming into a port or harbour, we've got the reds on our left and the greens on our right. So we're now into one of the smaller channels in the harbour, and as you can see behind me, the buoy has got smaller as well. So as we said, bigger buoys supporting the travel of the larger vessels, as it were, but then smaller buoys for the smaller channels. And you can see it's still conical in shape. The number is still an odd number, as we suggested, and this one you notice has NC before it, just meaning North Channel, indicating where we're actually at. But all that information's on the chart, and that reinforces the need for us to look at a chart, look at our chart plotter before we head out to understand what buoys we're expecting to see. Okay, so what we see behind us now is what's called a cardinal mark. And there are 4 cardinal marks marking the cardinal points of a compass: north, east, south, west. And the one behind us, well, that's a west cardinal mark. And I can tell that in 2 ways. One is the colours. The black is in the middle, and those arrows you can see at the top of the mark point to where the black is. So if the arrows are pointing together, I know it's a west. If the black is in the middle, it's where the arrows are pointing to, I know it's a west. And you can see there's a name on it as well, and on this one there's a number. And what that's telling us is that the safe water is to the west of that mark. Now the question is how we know that. So we're going to need to look at our chart plotter and our chart to be able to determine how to use that knowledge, that understanding of the buoy. And these cardinals, you can see this one's really big, so it's part of a main channel, but they get progressively smaller, and as we'll see in a moment, you can have posts as well. So behind me you can see another red channel mark, another port lateral mark. But you can see what's different with this one is that it's a post with a top mark. But if you notice, that top mark is the same shape, it's that same squarish shape. So we looked at the big red lateral marks, we looked at a smaller lateral mark, and then we can see this progression on to even smaller still, and that's just showing you the progression of the lateral mark system. The bigger the buoy, the bigger the boat it's aimed at, through to smaller boat operations like this one. One of the other sort of buoys you see lots of is these special marks, and this is a special mark behind me now. And a special mark is yellow. It may or may not have a yellow cross on the top, and it can be any size, any shape. So what's special about it? Well, basically special marks can show you anything. This one you can see is marking a personal watercraft area, but it could be a water ski area, it could be a racing mark for yachts, could be a sewage outfall pipe, a wreck, literally anything and everything. And again, you need to look on your chart plotter, your chart, to understand what it's trying to tell you. This one's obviously pretty obvious, it's marking a PW area, but not all of them are quite as obvious. So if you see one of these things, have a look on your chart plotter, on your chart, what's it trying to tell you, and then determine what you need to do when you're in its vicinity. So behind me we have another cardinal mark, but what do you notice that's different about this one? Well, obviously you can see it's a very different size to the one we looked at before, and this one's built for an old piece of railway track, and you can see a top mark on the top, different shape. You notice the arrows are pointing away from each other, and on this one actually you've got the black at the top and the black at the bottom of the post. So this is actually an east cardinal mark, saying that the safe water is to the east of here. So cardinals, like the lateral marks, come in different sizes and shapes, and we need to understand what it is we're looking at, whether it's an east or a west, or indeed a north or a south. And we'll have a look at shortly how we understand what cardinals are being used for. Okay, so behind us we see another starboard lateral mark. Again, similar things. The shape on the top mark is triangular, conical in shape. You can see the size of the post here is more substantial. So all the same concepts, the same principles, the colour's the same, the top mark's the same. And on this one we actually see there's a sign on there as well. So you'll find some lateral marks. Harbours will put some information on to help you in other respects as well. So we've come inside to the warmth of the classroom now, and we're going to just have a look at how the buoyage we saw there on the water actually all comes together, really, how it's used to help us navigate in or out of a port or harbour. So we can see here on the board behind me, we've just drawn up an example of a harbour. Bears a remarkable resemblance to Poole Harbour, actually. So we've got the channel coming in, we've got an island here, and then we've also got some other channels. We've got a big ship channel coming up to this port up here. We've got another channel coming around here towards this marina over on the right, and then coming back behind the islands we've got a smaller channel. And you can see we've got different sizes of red and green buoys on the board there. And the main channel is marked by those big red and green lateral marks we saw. So the bigger the buoys, the bigger the ships it's aiming to help. That's not to say we can't use that channel, but it's there really for the big ships. And then you can see off to the right here, then you've actually got smaller buoys, smaller floating buoys still, but marking the channel for smaller buoys. And then over this side of the island, we've actually got some posts with top marks, just like we saw on the water. But then how do the other buoys actually fit into that? We looked at cardinal marks, and we had north, east, south, west cardinal marks. And they can be used in a variety of ways. They could be a sandbank that you put cardinals at either end of, or in the case of a harbour, it could be to help us mark turn points in channels or channel joins. So for example, we come up here and there's a bit of a turn in this channel. We might say we put an east cardinal to say the safe waters to the east of that position. Or it could be we've got a join in a channel where there should be a green here and a red here, and we need to join that channel, and we might use a cardinal to join those two channels. Alternatively, we could use a preferred channel mark where we've got a combined red-green buoy, and you can see that buoy primarily looks green, and that's saying it's mainly for that channel, but the secondary channel is the smaller colour it's got. We're not going to know how these are used unless we look at our chart plot or look at our chart to understand these. We've got some yellow special marks we saw here marking maybe a 5 or 6 knot limit off a beach. And we've got some other buoys as well that we haven't necessarily seen on the water. We've got an isolated danger. Generally speaking, there's going to be a rock or wreck underneath that. And various other buoys that you don't see too often, but could be out there. Basically, buoyage is all about helping us get into and out of ports and harbours safely. We need to understand how they're used. We need to understand how they're trying to assist us. So get out there, look at a chart plotter, look at a chart, understand your local area. So hopefully this short session on buoyage navigation marks has been helpful in trying to give you more of an insight into how to use your knowledge of these buoys, these navigation marks, to navigate into a harbour. So when you're navigating in, when you're looking on your chart plotter and you're looking either side of you as you're coming in, you should see many of these red and green buoys, the cardinal marks, the isolated dangers that we've referenced. And obviously, before you go out, you need to actually have a look at what you're going to be going through, what you're going to be facing by way of buoyage, to work out a safe route, a safe way to actually get where you want to go. So get out there, get afloat, have fun.